I had a few people asking about an ex-boyfriend I mentioned in a previous post, so I thought, what better time than the present? I had been single for about a year and a half, give or take, and decided I wasn't looking for a relationship in any way, shape, or form, as I have a horrible track record with men. Like horrific. Either verbally, mentally, or physically abusive, or just all-around jerks. In September 2014, after a long bout of unemployment due to anxiety, depression, and many hours of therapy, I was finally ready to re-enter the workforce. As anybody who has been out of employment for a long time, for whatever reason will tell you, it's pretty hard getting back into it. Not even just mentally, but you will always be asked why you have been unemployed for so long, and you have to invariably lie. So after a handful or so of unsuccessful interviews, at the end of August, I was offered a job in customer service for an outsourcing company to start on September 9th. I was overjoyed and so excited to start with a clean slate, new friends, and money that was my own. Due to the anxiety I previously mentioned, whenever I started a new job, I tend to stay quiet at first, nervous to start a conversation with anybody of my own accord, especially in relatively large groups. The anxiety is due to a trauma I experienced a few years ago, so even for the first few months of being in a new place, I'm always looking over my shoulder or literally looking around corners to make sure I'm in a safe environment. After a short while though, I do tend to come out of my shell. I'm no wallflower. As it is an outsourcing company, if and when a contract or campaign ends, usually what happens is people will be offered new roles for new campaigns so people can potentially be there for years. People would call them lifers. It's pretty much one of those jobs that you can easily get complacent and stuck in, one of those bottom of the rung shitty call center jobs. On the first day, we all had to gather in the cafeteria to wait for the team leaders to come along and take us to our designated call floor. That's where I first saw him, Norman. He was about my height, 5'6", skinny with a lot of facial hair and a lip ring. He already knew everybody because he'd already been there for about 6 months or so. He was a little bit cocky, but not enough for it to be a concern necessarily. We got on notoriously from day one. I wear the same necklace as Dean Winchester from Supernatural around my neck constantly, and that's what we initially got talking about. He was a huge fan too. He has since almost ruined the show for me. I'll get to that. I soon found he was 28 and also a huge fan of Deadpool, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, WWE, and some other stuff I personally think is a little lame. I'm not one to judge. Liking it is one thing, but he took it to a whole nother level. A little later on, I found out that he awards Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was saving his life. Okie dokie then. We got along super well though, and everybody knew that we were going to get together. He'd bring me a coffee every time he went for one himself, and would buy me a pack of cigarettes on the morning of our weekly pay because I wouldn't get the chance to pick any up on the way to work, which is pretty nice, right? A few weeks later, we had all gone out for drinks on payday and he asked me out. I said yes. Biggest mistake. Everybody was super happy for us because we were both liked and everybody knew it was going to happen even if we didn't. Immediately, he began calling me his fallen angel, which made my skin crawl so much, I put an immediate stop to it. I had never cringed so much before in my entire life. The night after we made it official, we went out with his friends into town. Everything went swimmingly, and I stayed the night at his house, but we didn't hook up. I only stayed because his house was closer to town and the price of taxis is extortionate. I was pretty drunk by the time we got back to his house, where he poured his heart out to me and told me he had a daughter that he is not allowed to see because her mom is a total psycho. At the time I thought, that's terrible, that baby needs her father, but I'm an idiot. His mom, Norma, just walked into his room at that point, at 4 in the morning, to say hi and ask me about myself. It was pretty weird and pretty awkward, but I was drunk, so whatever. She was at work the next day and I stayed throughout the day because I was hungover and couldn't be bothered to move to go home. It was fine, but I immediately noticed how much weed he smoked. Every time I smoked a cigarette, he would smoke a joint. Literally every half an hour. It didn't bother me at first. As time went on, I would spend more and more time at his house and quickly began to realize how things worked over there. It was in the bad area of town, by which I mean to say a total shithole. There were stabbings and child abductions frequently, abandoned shopping carts in the street, and government-owned houses. He and his mom lived in one of those houses with the trailer in the front yard. I'm talking the full-on skits. Inside the house was a mess. There was always cat poop and cat litter strewn across the kitchen floor, where it was left for days. There were several homemade bongs under the kitchen sink, and the food was always Smart Price brand, despite the fact that every payday his mom would buy a new tablet, a new TV, or a new phone. Her gadgets took priority, it seemed. There was a tube of toothpaste in the bathroom that never moved and never went down. The windows were sealed with duct tape. They only had a bath, and the shower was literally a measuring jug that they'd fill with water. I was aware of his mother taking a bath maybe once. Him twice. His hair was always greasy, and after a while he began to stink of BO so much that an anonymous person at work actually had to make a complaint to our manager because it had become that bad. And his room itself was that of a preteen. There were song lyrics written on the wall with a bureau and Sharpie, along with juvenile drawings of TMNT, Deadpool, Spider-Man, and Wolverine, whom he called a style icon, whatever the heck that is supposed to mean. He's nearly 30. He had a huge TV that was surrounded by Deadpool toys and empty beer cans that was there when I first arrived in September, and still there when I left in December. The bin was always filled with stuff. There was cat hair, human hair, and crumbs of tobacco everywhere. The only furniture he has in his room is a bed, a wardrobe with no doors, a shelf with his toys on, a chest of drawers, and an actual lawn furniture to sit on. Everything was unclean. He had a box filled with lighters, rolling papers, tobacco, cardboard, and tons of weed, which was kept on one of those knee trays on top of a basket full of laundry that was never washed. Everything stunk. Even his house keys stunk. It was quite apparent as to what he expected my role to be in his house. I didn't live there, though. His mother suggested that I move in with them. Heck no. Even at that beginning stage of this relationship, I knew I didn't want to live with his mother. Norman didn't have a dad, so he was the man of the house. His mom had a feud with her sister and moved a few years before, so it was just the two of them against the world. This led me to believe that she was clinging on to him because she had no one else, save for her online boyfriend that lives in Texas, who she has never met. He expected me to cook and clean, and I complied. Not because he wanted me to, but because I liked to do that stuff and couldn't stand living in such a pigsty. I had to go for the groceries, which again, I didn't mind, but I was never given the money back for them. His mother once set me out for a few things, and paying the money back was never mentioned, and I thought it was too rude to bring it up myself out of the blue. There was another time I had baked a cake the night before to take home for my mom and bother with my own ingredients that I had bought, and when I woke up in the morning, she had eaten it all in one go. This enormous chocolate cake with icing on it and everything. Another time, I had been for a burrito with one of my brothers and his daughter, and I have a habit of ordering too much because the place we go to is also good. I had ordered a burrito stuffed with so much filling and nachos and couldn't finish them, so I got the rest to go and took them back to his house. After getting his mom's groceries, even though there was nothing stopping her from getting them herself except for pure laziness, I took them into the kitchen and she said, "Oh, what's this?" And without waiting for me to answer, took a fork out of the drawer and just tucked right in, helping herself. Whenever I was eating anything, she would hover over me like a freaking dog. She would point at something I was unwrapping or a bottle I was about to open and say, "Oh yes, please, I'll have some." She had the vocabulary, behavior, sense of humor, and common sense of a child. Without meaning to sound too cruel, she came across to not only me, but anyone that met her like a developmentally challenged child. One time she made me stand in her bedroom for over half an hour, where she showed me every single picture she had of Jensen Ackles on her laptop, not to mention the memes that she had made of him, pronouncing them memes. She has a framed picture of him on her bedroom wall. On the other wall was a framed picture of Dean Ambrose, a wrestler I'm told. She's 50, almost perfectly round with the hair of a butch lesbian and eyebrow piercing, which she got to match her son, who no longer has. At work, he became very overbearing very quickly. Our campaign was postponed for a few weeks, so I chose to go to a different one in the interim. He chose to stay. Of course, I made new friends in this other campaign. Some of them happened to be male. He would sit and glare at them and ask me super intrusive questions about how I knew them, if I'd banged them, and why we were friends. Tell me how he hated them, making up stories to put me off being their friend. I also began to notice that he had a pretty bad temper, despite being such a little guy. On Halloween, I had gotten off work earlier than him, so I went and bought rump steaks, potatoes to make homemade fries, mushrooms, wine, and a lot. I just won a bottle of champagne for a pumpkin carving contest that day, and he was furious that I drunk it before he got in. Not that he wanted any, but that he wasn't there to monitor me drinking in the first place. I'm 22. He came in and soon realized he left his wallet in the cab on the way home that I paid for. He got so mad and so angry that he punched the table and punched a hole in the wall. Luckily, I knew the cab driver, so we were able to get his wallet back that weekend, but then he was mad because I knew the cab driver, who was a male. I didn't even like him as a person, but just the fact that I knew him was enough to set him off. Dinner was ruined and I went to bed. The next morning, he woke me up with breakfast in bed to apologize. It was so gross I actually threw up. That night, we'd been planning to go to this Halloween party at a club we liked, so we went into town during the day so I could get the last few bits and pieces for my Carrie costume. Everything I picked up, he was critiquing. "Are you sure you want to spend money on that?" Or, Do you really need it? Or what a waste. Yet I was required to pay for everything for him. Money isn't a big thing for me personally, but the fact of the matter is we were working the exact same job, making the exact same money to the penny, and my rent was higher than his. Yet he always had nothing. We got home, had dinner, had a few drinks, and got ready. His best friend came over, who was actually pretty sweet, and we all went out. The queue was around the corner as the annual Halloween party at this club is so popular. While in the queue, I was approached by somebody, a girl. She said, "Is that Norman Bates?" Pointing to him, I replied, "Yeah, he's my boyfriend." She tells me that she feels she has an obligation to tell me that he has a daughter whom he refuses to see. The mother is her sister, and she has sent him letter after letter and called him countless times to see his daughter, and he was ignoring the letters and changed his number. I told him that his baby mama's sister was there, and he flew off the handle at me. He wouldn't speak to me at all. We left after an hour. I was absolutely furious. Now, this isn't the reason I compare him to Norman Bates. Clearly, these people aren't from a high or even low rung of society, but that doesn't warrant the nickname. What warrants the nickname is the completely bizarre relationship he and his mother have with each other. At the time, I was working 2 jobs. One at the company, as well as working the doors for local gigs, taking tickets, throwing people out. I'd work 7 days in a row at the company, and then on Friday I went to the venue to work a gig. I was exhausted. I got a cab from the venue when I was authorized to leave, stopped at a liquor store for some cigarettes and wine, and then my way to his. I let myself in, and there he is, with his mom, watching the wrestling in bed together, like in bed under the covers snuggling. I felt nauseous, like what a bizarre relationship. I sat and ate my food in silence. His mom ate the leftovers. Of course, then we watched Supernatural together. She cried at the end of season 9, actual tears sobbing. I'm a huge fan of SNL, so I put that on, and throughout the whole episode, she kept saying, "I don't get it. What does that mean?" Then she was going crazy, saying she wouldn't leave until we watched the Channing Tatum hosted episode groaning and moaning, stroking the TV whenever he appeared. I'd worked a 65-hour plus week, and I just wanted to sleep. She went to bed at 4 a.m. but stayed up all night, singing all kind of songs loudly. She would shout out to Norman to come see her while she was taking a shit on the toilet. They would have full-on conversations while she was doing so, and vice versa. They followed each other around like freaking lapdogs, literally pawing at each other. The snuggling continued, and it was soon amped up to a point where I was on the verge of having to sleep on the couch. They'd go on mother-son dates weekly. He would invite her with us on our actual dates, which were far and few between. And she'd sit facing him. It was honestly like she was in love with him. She added me on Facebook, which I had to accept, and anytime I changed my profile picture from me and him to me and a male friend, or literally anyone, even my brother, she would say, "What happened to the pic of you and Norman?" I just began ignoring her. At the finish, it seemed like she was jealous of me, that I was his actual girlfriend, not her. The one bath I saw her take, not literally of course, he sat on the edge of it and they had a full-on conversation while she was in the bath naked. She'd called me her daughter-in-law on Facebook and in public. We'd been together like 2 months. One day I came in from work to find he had shaved his beard like Wolverine, and I immediately noticed he had lips like Homer Simpson. Like a closed bracket. It looked horrible, but as Mom said, "Doesn't he look so sexy? How can you keep your hands off him? If I were 10 years younger, I'd be ripping his clothes off." Cue revulsion. This, in addition to his anger issues, temper, and horrible personality, made me have enough. I dumped him a few days later. He would text me and call me constantly afterward, but not enough for me to be anything other than irritated. I didn't feel threatened. I went to pick my stuff up from his house mid-December, a few days after I broke up with him. He told me, "I don't appreciate you talking about other guys you think are hot on Facebook. Stop doing that," and asked me if I was seeing anyone. I told him it wasn't any of his business. I went through every room grabbing all of my stuff in such a hurry to get out of there. I went into the kitchen as I had beer, eye drops, and some other things in the fridge. Normally, I'd have left then, but it's a matter of principle. He wasn't going to sponge off me anymore. Lo and behold, there was his mother in the kitchen, looking sullen and very aggressive. She told me he was a prince and I was throwing away the best thing to ever happen to me. I ignored her. She became very threatening, saying, "You're probably banging that one boy you've been walking around with. You think he's better than my little king?" I turned and looked at her, open-mouthed and completely appalled at her racism. Because yes, she called him a bunch of racial slurs. What the heck is happening? Really? I went into the fridge to get my stuff and she forcibly pushed me out of the way. "That food is mine now," I told her. "Is it?" I pushed her out of the way, grabbed my stuff and left. As I was leaving, I told him he was the grossest person I'd ever met, and against my better judgment, I called back into the house, enjoyed banging each other, and ran out into my brother's car. I got a text the next day asking whose car I got into and if I was banging him. Ironic considering in this situation, my family is the only one against incest, but I didn't reply. Over the next few weeks, I got a few abusive texts sporadically, but other than that, I heard nothing. I needed to go on sick leave in early December for unrelated issues, and the campaign ended in January. I saw him at the leaving party we had at the bar, but he just acted like a little bitch and didn't speak to me, acting as if he was so hard done by and he was a victim. I didn't really care, but I dropped it in just the right ear, about his bizarre relationship with his mom and also the fact that he has a daughter that nobody knows about and watches BS stories fall apart. I know it was mean, but to be honest, the way I was treated, he deserved much worse. I haven't heard from him since. He was at my local Comic-Con in March, but I didn't see him. But in the pictures, he looks like a freaking buffoon. And of course, he was there with Norma. So, Norma Bates, let's never meet again. I'm finally over the compulsion to wash my vagina out with bleach. Alright, a bit of background before getting this stuff going. At the time I was 18. I am female, and it was the first few weeks in college. I had moved hours away from my home in order to get some space for my family and actually do something I wanted to do. I'm not sure if this is the same for every college, but the first few weeks people seem to be scrambling for friends and are super outgoing. I was like that as well. In my major, I had a few friends, especially this girl named Kelsey. She was pretty and tall, and we were very similar in what we liked as far as hobbies and interests, so when she invited me to a house party that her male friend was throwing a few weeks into the semester, I immediately said yes. I had been drinking since I was 15. Know all the good drinking games, and in general, a very fun drunk to be around. Or so I am told, so I'm very excited. Now this is summertime in the Midwest, so we are talking 90 plus degrees, not including the humidity. I showed up at this house, party in shorts and a tank top. I hadn't really done anything special with my makeup or hair because honestly, in this weather, why bother? It would have legit just melted off my face anyways. Why I am telling you this much detail is important, I promise. So right away, I am not super into the scene. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-story house, kind of in the ghetto of the large town we are in. The music is so loud the old windows are rattling and the house is practically bursting with people. I was about to nope the heck out when Kelsey appeared and grabbed my waist. She was very excited to see me and pulled me inside, claiming that we had next day beer pong. Inside the house was just literally like an oven, with no windows and the air obviously off. Just the front and back doors was wide open to let the non-existent breeze through. I decided whatever. I was going to have some fun here and then leave kind of early to get home in time to shower before I passed out. Everybody was sweating, dancing to the music, and drinking lukewarm beer. It was pretty horrible if we are going to be honest, but as a college kid I could deal. Beer was free for girls, so I drank for nothing that night. It started getting kind of creepy a few hours into the party. I would guess around midnight. There had been a tall, thin guy that had been hovering, and I thought that he was Kelsey's friend because she grew up in the same town in college. He had dark hair, cut short, dark eyes, a nervous smile, and a ratty white shirt with dark baseball shorts. He was pretty much blended in with half the guys there. After dominating in beer pong for a solid hour, we were defeated, so I excused myself to go outside and cool off a bit. Kelsey said she would join me after she went to the bathroom quick. Outside was still horribly hot, but better than the inside surrounded by BO and warm bodies. I recognized a few people from earlier beer pong games on the campus, but no one I really cared to talk to. I turned around to watch for Kelsey when I almost ran into the guy. He was way taller up close, I would guess around 6'4", and he smelled like weed, beer, and body odor. I stepped back and looked up to chew him out. The awkward smile was affixed as his eyes were glued to my chest. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I snipped at him with a hand on my hip. "Did you get all pretty for me?" he asked, his voice deeper than I thought it would be. As stated above, no makeup, hair half up to keep my neck cool, and just wearing a casual clothes, I didn't look hot, pretty, or any of that. I was there to drink and hang out with a female friend. What? Was that a bad pickup line? "I've been watching you all night." "Yeah," I said, and went to take another step back. I noticed. "Are you looking for Kelsey?" He looked confused. "Who, Kelsey? No, I don't even know Kelsey." "Alright, red flags going up. So you were legit watching me all night?" He nodded, the creepy grin coming back. "Dude, what the heck?" He seemed surprised that I was upset. "Seriously, dude, you smell and you're very creepy. Please walk away." I went to move away and he grabbed my wrist tightly. It hurt to the point that I winced. and he practically snarled at me. "Hey dude, what's up?" A random guy from the party had taken a few steps off the porch and was checking in. Just my girlfriend being mouthy. The string being of an assaulter yelled back. He began to drag me down the road, literally dragging me so hard that my flip-flops came off and my bare heels were dragging on asphalt. He was muttering to me what he was going to do to punish me, hurt me, and bang me so bad I will behave. I was livid. I grew up fighting with all 6 of my brothers and dealing with an abusive father. No way was this human going to scare me. I squirmed like an alligator on a line, spinning and screaming. He grabbed my hair, but that made me more mad, and I bit him really hard. I tasted blood and started punching at anything I could reach. His hand loosened on my hair, and I wrenched my head back, spitting his own blood in his face. As he stumbled back, he went to go hit me. I think he maybe did it at one point, but with the anger and adrenaline coursing through me, it was like a light gap on my shoulder. I didn't feel anything. I didn't care. I was going to take him down. Out of nowhere, Kelsey seemed to appear with the guy who had called out to check on us. Kelsey grabbed my middle as I was flailing to claw his face, and the guy went to stand on the other guy's middle, so he couldn't get up. The next few minutes were a blur. I remember my heart pounding so hard in my chest that it echoed in my ears. I was ushered back to the porch where somebody got me water to clean out my mouth and a few paper towels. Apparently, I had a cut on my cheek and his blood was on my chin. The guy who had jumped in to help ended up letting the guy go. He got away and nobody called the police, and I didn't either because I had been underage drinking. All of it was a stupid combination of dumb teenagers, booze, and adrenaline. Needless to say, I didn't hang out with Kelsey again because she turned out to be the worst kind of person. She told me it was my fault for walking out with him, and I'd probably done something to lead him on. Found out later the kid who tried to take me was named Jordan and did attend the same college, but he had dropped out after a few months due to not attending. Funny twist, but a few years ago when I was 22, I was looking around on Facebook and one of the suggested friends was Kelsey. She was shockingly in a relationship with Jordan and they were having their second kid. A few people have told me over the years that she had gotten into some hard drugs and gotten together with a total loser, so that's fun. She has contacted me a few times trying to explain why Jordan acted that way and trying to defend her baby daddy to me. No thanks. So in short, creepy Jordan who tried to do whatever he wanted to me, and shitty friend of the year Kelsey, please stay away, for your sake. This happened 2 years ago. My best friend and I, 19 female, decided to take an impromptu trip to Cuba at an all-inclusive for a week. All we wanted to do was sit on a beach. We didn't care for the nightlife or boys or anything, other than the books we brought and the constant flow of rum. Everything was perfect. The resort was very, very remote and was mostly villas in a large area. Everything is ground level with a little deck. We had the beach to ourselves apart from other guests, which mostly seemed to be other Canadians and Europeans on holiday. My friend and I would periodically walk along the beach as you do on vacation. I remember noticing a man sitting alone aggressively, if that's possible, staring at a woman wading in the water. We laughed, thinking, what a frickin' weirdo. On our walk back, he was still there, but watching us as we approached. As we walked past him, he proceeded to ask, "Hey, do you have the time?" First of all, does it look like I have the frickin' time? I'm in a bathing suit. We replied, maybe 1:45. He said okay and asked where we're from, and proceeded to have a half-assed convo with this 50-ish-year-old German dude. Now, I'm normally not rude. I'll engage in conversation like this and politely depart. My best friend will always do this, even more so, even going to the extent of showing interest. She has a kind heart, but I feel as though this conversation triggered it all. We went back to our spot on the beach. A while later, we realized he'd moved near us. We thought, creep, but hey, it's a public place, we'll just ignore him. That night at dinner, I noticed him alone, staring at me from across the room. Once again, creep. We mentioned the man to an older couple that we befriended, and they also brushed it off as a creepy old man staring at young women. Our week went on, routinely seeing this man. He didn't seem to stare as much. Maybe somebody had said something to him. Maybe he'd found someone else to stare at. Wrong, very, very wrong. We were having a drink and chatting in the common bar area when we decided to call it a night. As tomorrow we were leaving, we began to walk back to our villa. It's a lovely winding walk past all the other villas, but not well lit whatsoever. We got to the fork where we turned right. When we then see this man coming down the middle path toward us, he immediately changes his direction and cuts across the grass to follow us. Now there is no reason he should be coming down this path following us, as it leads to only 4 villas, and we know he's not staying in either of them. We decided this was too creepy and calmly took a detour onto another path that takes us back to the common area. He follows. We grab another drink to shake it off. The German man proceeded to sit down at a table facing away from us, and in the most nonchalant way ever, he begins to pick up his chair and rotate it every 10 to 15 seconds. We watched in literal horror as he made the last rotation to fully face us, just staring. We got up and went to the lobby bathroom, trying not to panic. Maybe we were overreacting and maybe it was a coincidence. Oh heck no. When we walked out of the bathroom, he was sitting on the damn bench waiting. Our faces must have said it all as we made eye contact with him. My heart was in my throat. I was in awe. I thought this stuff only happens in movies, right? We bolted back to the main area. We told the bartender and a few staff, and all they kept saying was, "Yeah, he's sick in the head and he stares at everyone." Okay, not comforting. After 45 minutes of waiting, we never saw him. By then, it was midnight and we were so tired. We got a staff member to walk us back to our villa. All I could think is, what if he's watching what villa we go into? My anxiety was through the roof, plotting all the possible ways I could defend myself should something happen. That night we didn't sleep. Maybe 2 hours, just waiting for the sun to come up. I only realized how scared I must have been when the morning came and we went onto the porch. My jaw was killing me from clenching it due to stress all night, and the bathing suits that we left out to dry were gone, but only the bottoms. We got on our plane home that day. His face is still engraved in my memory. Sometimes I wonder if he was harmless and just creepy from a distance, but you know, I'm glad we didn't meet again. This happened a few years ago when I was 23. 5'7", female, and kind of skinny if that matters. I was working at this little bakery in my hometown. Paid okay, lovely clientele. So there was a coffee shop in the same shopping center. The center was L-shaped, with the cafe in the foot of the L and the bakery towards the middle of the long part. I knew the two girls who worked in the cafe. They were super sweet. The bakery also served tea and the cafe had sandwiches, so we referred customers to each other all the time. So on the day in question, I pulled into the parking lot and noticed the cafe was dark. Weird, as the cafe opened way earlier than the bakery and the owner was a total stickler for attendance. There was also a dark, expensive-looking car parked in front. Probably one of their loyal customers, just as curious about them being closed as me. I shrugged it off and set to opening the bakery. So I'm going through the morning's preparations, and not 10 minutes after I flip the open sign, the doorbell tinkles. This young guy with dark, kind of messy hair walked in. He was dressed sort of business casual. He had on a normal black shirt and pants, but a vivid green tie. Smiled like Patrick Bateman. He walks up to the counter, and I try to smile like my spidey sense isn't tingling. The guy was just off. Even the way he walked up, like only the counter was stopping him from walking right into me. I gave him the rote bakery greeting. "So, what do you have?" He said. "I bet you like to show me those tits." I can't manage anything better than, "Excuse me?" He nods and launches into a tirade of the filthiest bullshit I've ever heard in one place, telling me that I need to show him them now, saying they were fat. What the heck, and even more vile stuff I'm still trying to block out. My mind is in fragments right now. It's literally the last thing I expected to hear that morning. I somehow managed to get out that he wasn't supposed to speak like that or allowed to, and I would have to get my manager. The guy started mocking me like a grade schooler, doing a whiny imitation of my voice and throwing my words back at me. I threaten the cops. He laughs. All this time, I've been trying to put as much distance between myself and the guy as I can, scared he's going to grab me across the counter. We didn't really have a back room per se, more like a little alcove with a phone and a filing cabinet. My phone was still underneath the counter, and I sure as heck wasn't going back for it. I picked up the landline receiver and hit 9. Suddenly, the guy's voice drops. He says, "You don't put that down right this second, I'm coming over there." My head freezes. My finger doesn't. By the time I hit 1, he dashes out the door and hops in the expensive car. The fricker parked at an angle so I couldn't see his plates from the bakery, and peels out of there. I managed not to dissolve into tears, and I describe the situation to the operator. She agrees to send a squad car. I hang up and dial my manager, who is supportive and gets there before the cops do. As a small poor bakery, we only have fake security cams as a deterrent, so they only have my description of the guy to go on. As they take my statement, I remarked that it sure was weird that the cafe wasn't open when I got there. Could we check in with them? The girls were terrified. Turns out that my close encounter of the creep kind of was an everyday nightmare for them. The guy had been going there for months, saying the creepiest, violently sexual shit to these poor sweet girls. In a fit of desperation, they had locked the door and shut off the lights when they saw him drive up that morning, hoping that he would go away. They hadn't reported it because they were afraid of what would happen. One girl was under 18 and the other was kind of a recent immigrant, so they didn't feel like making waves. And they thought it would all be blamed on them. The owner of the cafe was this Russian woman who hated everybody that was younger or prettier than her, so no support on that front. In the end, I don't think anything came of it. It took a long time for me to be able to be comfortable at work again, and the girls quit not long after the incident. So, creepy barista harasser. That's not me unless you want me to go all mama bear on your ass for what you did to my girls. Hello everyone. This cautionary tale dates back to the mid-90s. Remember, cell phones were still a luxury in those dark times, so I didn't have one. I was still an angsty teenager and in a bit of a mood. I didn't feel like talking to people and so neglected to arrange a ride from a late school event. I was delayed getting out of the play, and by that time most of my friends had already gone home. I didn't have my own car. My mom worked late, so she wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. My only choice for a ride was my very, very recent ex, and it would have made her drive in the wrong direction anyway. I decided that the best option was to walk home, even though it took an hour and it was already after dark. The route was one long hilly road. It connected several quite suburban subdivisions of houses, and the road was adequately bathed in the orange sodium glow of streetlights, so I didn't feel concerned for my safety. I had a large backpack full of books and gym clothes that I was taking home to wash. The bag was bulky and awkward, but not very heavy. I was confident that I could walk the route without too much trouble. I usually walked home after school anyways. About a third of the way on my trek, some guy on a bike starts to pedal past me. He was a much older guy in his late 30s maybe, but obviously trying to dress down and look younger. He wore a long gold chain around his neck, a fact emphasized by his shirt, which was unbuttoned all the way. He kept swerving through the empty street, doing rapid figure eights, and eventually popping a wheelie. He stopped next to me and asked, "What do you think about that?" Well, I'm the quiet, contemplative type and not usually impressed by sudden bursts of ostentatiousness, so I didn't think much of his display. Honestly, my only thought about it was that this guy was kind of stupid for doing those things without a helmet. Trying to be polite, I said, it was pretty good, I guess. Yeah, I'm Mike, so what's your name? This was a much younger, more naive version of myself. For the sake of this story, we'll call me Henry, because it rhymes and that's important for later, as you will discover. I'm Henry. Mike proceeds to circle around the street on his bike so he doesn't outpace me. Are you running away from me, Henry? I realized that this was a valid question given the huge overstuffed bag on my back, the late hour, and the fact that I was probably walking around with a scowl on my face. No, I'm just walking home from a school event. I realized there was a weird, hopeful tone to his voice when Mike had asked. Mike continues to circle around, and I'm slightly grateful when he wheels away because he smells like sour beer and BO. Like I said, I wasn't in the mood to deal with people that night, so if he wasn't talking to me, I tried to not engage him. Henry, do you like swimming? Unfortunately, we had drifted into a darker patch of road, so he couldn't see my patent annoyed eyebrow arching. Sometimes, I huffed, non-committedly, trying to let the annoyance color my voice. Henry, he drawled at me with each loop he pulled up next to me. After 3 or 4 revolutions, I snapped. What? Do you know the trailer park at the top of the next hill, Henry? I did and grunted an affirmative. Well, they don't lock their pool gate. Do you like hot tubs? Finally, younger, stupider me is picking up on his instincts and cluing into the fact that this guy is a huge weirdo. I tried to deflect the question. Sorry man, I don't have a swimsuit. He responds, well, good thing you don't need one. He did another slow rotation in his figure eights, saying my name in long, eerie time to his bicycle loops. And when I failed to respond, he followed it up with, You running away from home? Again, his voice was strangely optimistic when he asked. Starting to get severely unnerved by this guy, I blurted out, I'm going home. There was a slight wobble in my voice. My cool had definitely not been kept now. He asked again if I wanted to go sit in the hot tub. I tried to keep him in my peripheral vision, but avoid eye contact, and I refrained from answering any more of his questions. I also tried to reach up and loosen my backpack straps in case I had to drop the pack and take off running. He continued circling back and forth on the road to stay at my walking pace and droning that long, gravelly incantation that made me dread the sound of my own name, punctuated by an occasional short bark of Henry. Suddenly, the safe suburban subdivisions looked a lot further back from the road. More of them were gated than I remembered. This continued for another half hour. I considered turning down a side street, but the gated fortresses had only receded to shallow cul-de-sacs, and I didn't want to get cornered down one of them. The entire time he continued to chant, Henry, Henry, don't you want to talk to me? Are you running away from home? Finally, we reached the top of the hill with the fabled trailer park and hot tub. He cut his current slow circle short and darted across to reach the street to the pool and managed to cut right in front of me so that he nearly hit me with his bike. You want to try the hot tub, Henry? No, I screamed. I do not. Fortunately, he actually accepted the rejection this time for once and started his slow bike ride down the side street, calling back to me. Think about it and come back. You can stay in my trailer if you want. I just ran the rest of the way home, cutting across several neighbors' lawns and looking over my shoulder most of the time. I work as a baker, so I keep some odd hours. Shifts can start at 3 a.m., but things are usually pretty quiet despite the bakery's close proximity to a few big universities. It's a great shift, in and out of the ovens, listening to podcasts, busting my ass, doing my own thing. Other employees don't arrive until after 6, so you can count on a few hours of alone time. The kitchen is in the back of the bakery, but the space is pretty open and the street is visible from the ovens. I'm not usually distracted by anything going on out front. The occasional drunk kid stumbling by, early speedwalkers, but nothing too expecting or out of the ordinary. One morning I come in after a long shift the day before. I'm tired. I had been there late because the pipes burst onto the floors and flooded our poor neighbors in the basement. The plumbers came and tried to track down the source. Clog? Crack? Who knows? Old building. They are pretty sure they fixed it. I had been here before with the plumbing, so I knew to be wary of more issues. I also felt awful for the folks downstairs and really didn't want them to get flooded again. I'm backing away, getting to the groove, when that feeling washes over me. I'm being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I don't want to look out front and risk eye contact, so I keep my head down, keep working, and I pretend I didn't notice. I look at the clock. It's 3:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. There is a figure outside of the glass door waving and waving, relentlessly. After about 45 seconds, I can't help myself and I look up. It's a middle-aged, balding, chubby man with a tucked-in white polo shirt, pleated khakis, a windbreaker, and a phone strapped to his belt. Seems harmless, maybe like he was working. I stare down at the table, looking busy, and rack my brain. Is this the plumber? Is it the landlord's son checking on the building? He's waving like a maniac trying to get my attention. Because of the flooding the day before, my mind goes right there, rationalizing. Damn, the pipes must have bursted again, and he needs me to take care of it. I slowly approach the front door, shrugging, miming, wondering what he wants. He is mouthing absolute gibberish to me, waving his hands maniacally, not shouting so I can hear him through the glass. I go straight up to the door. In my mind, the building is flooding and my boss is going to kill me for not handling it. And if that's not it, this poor schlub just got in some horrible accident or just witnessed a crime or is hurt or something like that. I get right up to the door without opening it and he is pleading with me, trying to communicate something important. This part is the stupidest thing I could have done, and it makes me cringe just thinking about it. I open the door. I'm absolutely alone, by the way. A young woman, and I didn't even grab my chef's knife. What? Is everything okay? I say. Good morning. I see you're hiring. Looks like you could use some help in there. May I come in? Oh, wow. He's pointing to our now hiring sign on the window. I slam that door shut and bolt it, running back into the kitchen. My face crimson red with the heat of anger. As soon as I'm in the kitchen near the knives, I look up and he's gone. That's the last time I make eye contact before dawn. This is my first time ever posting, and to be honest, so many creepy things with guys have happened to me over the years. I figure it might be good for me to post them here. Maybe it will help me dealing with it all. Mentally, I don't know. By the way, this might be a long read or listen. It was around 4 years ago now, I think. I was 25 years old and I was working with a door-to-door sales company. I had moved down to England as a better job opportunity within the company came up. And I thought, why not? Nothing's holding me back at home. About 6 months down the line, I was told that they wanted me to work in the office back home for a week. With my job, this was very common. We called them road trips, and I jumped at the chance so I could come home and see my friends for a week. It fell on a Saturday. I had been out working in my area, and business was usually pretty slow on a Saturday as not many people were at home. I got a Facebook message from a guy I worked with called Steven. Steven was a guy who I had met on one of our previous road trips, and he seemed like a pretty okay dude. Let's just call him quirky, I guess. He had kind of a strange sense of humor, but he seemed like a lovable kind of person if you got past the fact that he stares at you a lot and kind of acts weird. I'm quite an outgoing person, and I like to make friends with everybody. This stems from high school because I had like one friend throughout that whole ordeal. He messaged me asking if I wanted to grab a drink after work, and I obliged as I hadn't been home in 6 months and I thought it could be cool. He told me that his flatmates would be home and we could all grab some pizza and beers. Sounded good. We arranged a meeting time and place and it was all set. Now with my job, our hours were pretty long. Some of us would be in the office until 11 p.m. By the time I got back to the office and sorted everything out, it was past 9:30 p.m. and my last train home was in an hour. I messaged Steven explaining that I wasn't going to be able to make it as I would miss my last train and hopefully could catch up with him before I go home. He immediately rings me on my phone. He sounded nervous, to say, like more than usual. He explained that there was a spare bedroom at his house and it wouldn't be an issue if I crashed there. And according to him, his flat was a 10-minute walk from town. I saw no issue with this as I could just walk to work in the morning, and I agreed to meet him in the place we arranged. This is when things started to get weird. I'm waiting for him and he turns up looking very sprightly, and we give each other a big hug. He then leads the way, and as I follow, he tries to hold my hand. I did an awkward shuffle, so I couldn't hold his hand and just brushed it off as him being awkward. I should have just gone home at this point. So we're walking to his flat, and I have absolutely no idea where it was located. Since we were laughing and joking and catching up, I didn't realize that we had been walking for a good half an hour. On the phone, he said he lived 10 minutes away from town. We finally get to his flat, and I noticed that it's situated down a steep hill in a heavily wooded area. I kind of just shrugged it off, but I did notice that I got no 3G, and my signal was showing as no service. We get in, and I take off my shoes and jacket, and I notice that the flat is empty. I asked where his housemates are, and he said they had gone out for a bit. He then makes us some pizza and hands me a beer. I'm a pretty slow drinker, and beer isn't really my favorite, so as I would get halfway down my bottle, he would hand me a fresh one. I would explain multiple times that I couldn't drink as fast as him, but he kept handing me fresh bottles, to the point where I had like 6 half-full beers beside me. He then asked me this. Do you like Scissor Sisters? They're actually a band that I'm not into, especially not now. I said they were decent, and he told me that his favorite song was Laura. This doesn't seem relevant right now, but it will soon. I was starting to get a little weirded out by this point and noticed I had no signal on my phone, and it hit me that I don't have a freaking clue where I was and no signal to text anyone to come and get me. He then went on to ask if I was seeing anyone. I told him I was seeing the manager of the office I worked in and that we were both really happy. That was actually a lie because I had been single for 2 years. The conversation moved on, and by this point it was around midnight, as my job required me to be on my feet for 10 to 11 hours a day. I was getting pretty sleepy and asked if I could go to bed in the spare room he apparently had. He led me to this bedroom, and I noticed that there was only one bedroom in the whole flat. So where would his flatmates sleep? His room was quite small, and I noticed that his double bed consisted of 2 single mattresses pushed up against each other, and had separated them and placed a blanket on my bed. I was too nervous to say anything. I'm quite an anxious person, you see, so I thought I could just get through the night. I'd be fine and sneak off as early as I could in the morning. He then said to me, "And I'll run you a bath in the morning." I say thank you and stressed that I was feeling very tired from work and I'd see him in the morning. I then wrapped myself up like a burrito and tell him that I need to listen to music to fall asleep, so I pretended to put my iPod on. I had the earphones in, but it wasn't playing any music. This was so if he tried anything while he thought I was listening to music, I would hear him. This is when it gets really messed up. I finally drift off at probably 1-ish. I'm then woken up at 1:30 with Steven shaking me, saying, "Hey, your bath is ready." I wake up and realize he'd run me a bath. At 1:30 in the morning. So I politely say thank you, but I'll have one before I go to work. I drift back off to be woken up again at 2:30. Again, "Your bath is ready." I ignore him this time. 3:30. "Your bath is ready." At this point I was very tired and I kind of snapped at him and I said I needed my sleep. 4 o'clock. I wake up on my own. I can hear Steven. He's awake and he's playing Laura by the Scissor Sisters over and over on a loop. I was half awake and half asleep by this point, so my brain didn't process what was happening. 4:30. I wake up again and I could hear a shuffled beating noise from behind me. Now where I was facing, there was a wardrobe with kind of mirror doors, but it wasn't like an actual mirror. It was like PVC almost, but you could clearly see your reflection in it, and I see Steven, clearly masturbating over me. He was literally jacking off over me as I slept. My brain just completely went to panic mode and I didn't know what to do, so I just lay there until he was finished. I'll never forget that, ever. At 7:30, your bath is ready. By this point, I'd absolutely had enough. I get up really grumpily and he's there, in his boxers. I tell him I need to leave and go to grab my stuff and he grabs me. He pulled me into his arms from behind, almost flops us both back onto the bed, and starts violently stroking my hair and face. He had a tight grip, but the adrenaline had kicked in and I freed myself. I locked myself in the bathroom with the full bath of water still intact. I then realized the door didn't have a lock on it and it was made out of shutter slat things, so he could easily see in while I was having a bath. I hide in the corner not knowing what to do. I was trapped. I was on the verge of a panic attack by this point, so I sat in the corner for a good 40 minutes and during that time, he must have asked me to come out like 8 times. I made a plan. I was going to tell him there was an emergency and I had to go. I know looking back it might seem silly, but when your mind is in a complete state of panic, you don't think straight. I was still fully dressed from the night before, and I knew my handbag and shoes were out in the hallway. I made a run for it. I opened the door, and he's standing there in his boxers with a cup of tea that he'd made for me. Spiked, no doubt. He pushed me in the bathroom and tried to force me into the bath full of water. I knew that this was his plan all along, to drown me. Somehow I managed to escape his grasp. I blacked out, so I don't know how, but I think the adrenaline just kicked in, and I managed to get out of there. I literally bolted to the hallway so quick and unlocked the door faster than I ever have in my life. I don't know what would have happened if the keys weren't still in the front door. I run so far up the hill and keep running until I get to Main Street. He didn't follow me. My phone then started to get a signal again and he started calling me. I kept hitting the cancel button, but it was no use because he wouldn't stop. Then he started texting me saying I left my earphones there and I had to come back for them. Absolutely no way in heck was I going back there. I found a local Weatherspoons that was open during breakfast and I went inside. Blocked his number and blocked him on every form of social media I could think of. I ordered a breakfast and just cried for ages. That was the most terrifying ordeal of my life. Can't even bear to listen to the Scissor Sisters. When I explained to the girls at work what happened, they flipped. I didn't call the police or anything, but it certainly made me more wary that there are weirdos out there. So I hope to never meet Steven again. I've read a lot of these posts and never thought to post my own experience. The only thing that made me remember this story, I've tried to bury this away in my memory for years, is that I had to call the bank today about a refund, and the person I spoke to had the same accent and same name. His real name is quite unusual, which is what made me think and sounded very nervous on the phone to me. I know it's a call center and the chances that it's him are slim. However, the call center is based in the same business park where I work now. Safe to say I was spooked. Anyways, thanks for reading or listening. I grew up in Whitefish, Montana, a very rural small ski bum town in northwest Montana, close to the Canadian border. We would sell lemonade and huckleberries on the side of the street in front of my house, which was set back about 100 feet and surrounded by houses distributed sparsely through wooded areas. We had fun selling the lemonade despite the fact that there weren't a lot of people to whom we could sell it to. It was just nice being outside when you're a kid during the 3 months it's actually sunny. Before the huge migration of the moneyed classes to the area, it was very Andy Griffith. In fact, actor Jim Nabors, the actor who played Gomer Pyle, lived there, and I was even able to attend an event there and feed the fish in his trout ponds. So there wasn't much to worry about these types of things, and we spent nearly every sunlit hour outside. Well, as my friends and I were selling lemonade, an old green and rusty car slowed down when they approached the stand. They then resumed the speed limit and continued on. That seemed odd, but the car had Washington state plates, so we assumed they thought about asking us for directions, since it wasn't unusual for people to get lost in the area. Maybe they thought twice about getting directions from 7-year-olds. But the car returned and did the same thing 2 more times. We weren't worried, but certainly it was weird and we were a little cautious. The car returned and stopped right next to the stand, with the passenger side door closest to me. I'm 4 feet from them, but 100 feet from my house. Although my house had a big bay window in front and we did have a large grass yard, There was a line of trees between our stand and my lawn/house, and there was limited visibility from the window where my mother was home and no visibility from any other houses. I will never forget the woman in the passenger seat. She was really skinny with gray hair that had a yellow tobacco hue from serious smoking. I didn't see the man driving that well because he was looking mostly in the driver's side mirror and only occasionally glancing at us. Their clothes were old and seemed dirty. I said, "Hi." The woman responded, "You must be pretty big boys to be out here selling lemonade all by yourselves." "Well, my mom lets us," I said. "Is she home?" "Yes," I said. The woman looked at the man driving for a few seconds. I didn't hear her or see any exchange of glances or words between them. She just turned back and said, "Okay, well, I'll have a lemonade." I told her how much that would be in 1986 lemonade prices, which were probably 5 to 10 cents on the spot market of the Whitefish lemonade commodities floor. She went into her purse. I could hear coins, but she immediately handed me a $5 bill. I don't know why the other things weren't as disconcerting because, in all honesty, their appearance, their slowing down, the way the man wouldn't look at me, and the question about my mom. None of those issues in isolation would be out of place, or even a couple. But hearing the coins was the catalyst that precipitated fear. I responded, I don't have change." "No, you can keep the change, honey. Just come and take it." Looking at me and then glancing forward. The road is very straight and you can see if anyone is approaching for about half a mile either way. I was a kid and $5 was a lot of money to a kid in a small town in the 80s. I thought they were weird and I was certainly anxious, but $5. I stepped up to the car, the man still not looking at me, continuing to stare in the driver's side mirror. The road behind him. I take the few steps necessary to get sufficiently close to her hand so as to be able to reach the money. Except the bitch quickly leaned out the window and grabbed my wrist and started pulling me in. I screamed my lungs out and my friend went running to my house screaming. The man started to lurch the car forward and the woman must have become unbalanced, and with my pulling away I was free and ran as fast as I could to my house where my friend was pounding on the door screaming already. My mom got outside quickly and he told her. The car was gone, but there was a $5 bill on the ground. Screw lemonade stands. I grew up in the suburbs, and outside of the occasional play park or sports field, there was nothing to do. I and my neighbors used to play knock and run, or its other name, Ding Dong Ditch. For context, I have a sister who is a year younger than me, and my neighbor James was the same age as me. His older sister was 14 at the time, and she also played with us from time to time, although I think she wanted to hang out with my sister, whom she thought was cute. I was admittedly the biggest coward in the group, and to this day, my flight instinct is significantly stronger than my fight instinct. So I would never ring the doorbell as I would always find a way to wiggle out of it. I always found watching it more entertaining than doing it. On this particular afternoon, my cousins came over. One of my cousins was my age. The other was a few years younger than me and couldn't play with us, and the other was a year older than me. But everyone treated him like he was an adult, even though he was only like 11. Or at least that's how I perceived it. Let's call his cousin Daniel, as he is somewhat important to the story. I am not a reliable narrator, as it's almost been 10 years since these events, but I will try my hardest to remember them. Anyways, I think I'm getting off topic. My cousins came over and we were banished outside to play, and we all decided that knock and run was a good idea. We usually just played around our immediate street, never venturing further than the next street over out of fear of getting lost in copied and pasted suburban streets. We made our way up the street to the play park on the top of the hill. It sat where a house could have been, and somebody cut across it into the next road. As we sat on the play equipment, we decided that a vote should decide who knocked first, and of course I was picked. I remember getting myself out of it and getting my older cousin to take my place. I'm thankful that he was and is proud as he is. It helped me get out of a lot of situations. We decided that our first target would be the fanciest looking house in the area. A white marble house with a fountain in the front yard and a curved driveway. I remember sitting next to a car. I was small enough to look under it from the curb, and I had a clear view of my cousin sneaking up to the door and ringing the doorbell 3 times in order to get the attention of whoever was inside. And he bolted down the pathway towards the street to hide behind the cars. But before he got to the fence, an older man in a black leather apron with what I assumed was paint came sprinting after him. I immediately knew something was wrong. This wasn't the usual response to a knock and run. Sure, we have encountered some angry people before, but this was something very different. He practically flew down the walkway towards Daniel and threw his hand out to grab him. This didn't feel like anything someone his age could do, and it scared the heck out of me. I think I might have been the only one with a clear view of what was going on, which meant that I was the first to see what was happening. It wasn't until the man was practically on top of Daniel that he noticed he was being chased, and the scream that he made when he realized this will always stick with me. As I said at the start of this, Daniel was and still is a very proud person who will always try to prove himself, so hearing this scream of pure terror struck at my core. Everybody was clued in at this point as to what was happening. Daniel didn't open the waist-high gate at the end of the path. He just jumped it, which I think ultimately saved him from getting hurt as the old man had to take a second to open it. Daniel was sprinting down the street as fast as I'd ever seen him do so. "Stop, you little shit," the man shouted with a deep, angry voice, which did actually stop Daniel in his tracks. They were both standing in the middle of the road at this point, reminding me of an old Western movie when two cowboys would be standing at either end of the main road. The man marched straight up into Daniel's face, and I could finally get a good look at him. His skin resembled rough leather, and the few strands of hair on his head had long since grayed. He was clean-shaven, and he was wearing white pants, a white button-up, and a black leather apron that had what I rationalized as red paint on it. After he was maybe a half foot from Daniel, he started to berate him, and I could only make out the words, "Sick people in there." Everything about this man threw me off, and I could see my neighbor and my other cousin, who was hiding in the bushes, felt the same. My neighbor's older sister, who I will call Tay, screamed out at him from the other side of the road, which gave Daniel the opportunity to run as fast as he could away from the man. We all ran at that point. I don't think I or anyone else knew we were running off to, but I found myself in the car park of the shopping center across the road from me. I waited there for maybe 30 minutes, just watching cars come in and out, feeling safer with a large group of people. I had no idea at the time if he chased one of us, but I knew that I was safe. I made my way back to my house and found that I was the last one to return. My cousin Daniel ran straight home and Tay followed him. My other cousin and neighbor ran around the suburbs for a bit before deciding to go home. My mom was missing when I got home, and I realized that she had been told what happened. My mom is someone who wasn't afraid of protecting her own, and she is one of the strongest people I know, so I felt pretty safe that she was aware and was off telling him to screw off. But when she got back, she seemed weird. She didn't want to talk about it or anything, and any color from her face had completely drained. We slept at my neighbor's house that night because my mom wanted to talk to my dad about something serious, and I think we all knew what it was about. Nothing happened for a while after this. Not for a while, but my mom was a lot more protective of what we did outside. We were no longer allowed to play knock and run or go up the road without a parent. It really bugged my sister, who loved to play outside, but I don't think she fully understood what happened. I have a lot more stories about this guy, and I probably will write more because this has helped me get a better grip on everything that happened throughout that year. But I hope you enjoyed the very first event and one of the worst periods of my life. Part 2. Okay, so before I get into the next few events, I think that it's important to address some things that I've read in my last post. I know that we were the ones who originally disturbed him, but I thought it was important to dedicate a post to that event as it kind of kicked off a lot of stuff. I'll probably update this post with a few more stories just to get it all out there, but I just wanted to say that I fully understand mine and everyone else's part to play in part 1, but I believe that the issue really began after that, which is what I'll show you today. Sorry if I upset anyone. And thank you all for the positive reception to part 1. It means a lot that people are interested in what I've got to say, which makes me feel better about writing about other events. First thing first. I promised a few of you that I would ask my mom what the old man had told her last night at dinner, and I did manage to do so. She was surprised that I remembered what happened and tried to sweep it under the rug, but I kept pressing her for answers. I'm not proud of pressing my mom into talking to me about something like this, but curiosity got the best of me. I know that isn't an excuse, but I feel it somewhat justifies my actions, as a lot of you wanted to know as well. After I pressed her for more answers, she grabbed my arm and led me to my room before placing me on the bed. She sat next to me and told me to not repeat anything of what I said to my sister, my cousins, or anybody else who was involved with this man throughout that year. She finally opened up about how she was sitting at home watching TV, and she heard a loud knock on the front door. It was my cousin Daniel and my neighbor Tay, who looked terrified and exhausted. After letting them in and grilling them for answers, my mom was rightfully mad that somebody had spoken to them in such a way, and so she got up to go confront the man. And on her way out, my other cousin and neighbor arrived, whom she also sent inside. She was concerned about where I was, but Daniel made it clear that I ran the opposite direction of the man and that he would go out looking for me, which he didn't. My mom made her way up to the play park and saw the man pacing back and forth up and down his driveway. He didn't seem angry or upset. He apparently didn't seem like anything besides someone marching back and forth, which took my mother's mood from enraged to confused. She walked up to the front gate and let herself in, which made the man stop almost immediately and stare at her. I'm surprised that she didn't turn back and go home at that point, because that's what I imagine anyone would have done, but as I said in part 1, I'm a coward. The man marched up to my mom and started to berate her about trespassing on his property, which she meant by berating him about terrifying some kids. This apparently went on for a couple of minutes before he said something that was terrifying to her. My mom didn't say exactly what he said because she said that she was trying to forget it, but he said something along the lines of, "I will show both of you what it feels like to have somebody on your property when you don't want them there, and then I'll shut those kids up forever." He tried to grab her at that point, but she quickly moved away and left his yard, swiftly walking back home. This really affected my mom, but that was the answer I got from her. I gave her a hug and apologized for pressing her to tell me, and we got back to dinner shortly after. I don't regret her telling me, but it feels like knowing the end of a movie and seeing all the hints leading up to it, recontextualizing a lot of stuff. It had been about a month, maybe a month and a half, since the first initial incident with the man. We hadn't seen him since, and I was forgetting about it until I went to the shop one day. For context, my parents had started to let me go to the shops by myself to grab little things for them. I was young at the time, and the shops were across the road from me, so getting there wasn't an issue. One day, my dad asked me to go out and grab a loaf of bread for him. He gave me $2 coins and sent me on the way to the shops. I was getting used to doing this on my own and enjoying my independence. I grabbed the bread, which was on the far side of the large supermarket, and made my way towards the registers. I stopped by the toy aisle and took a look at all the low-quality mass-produced action figures that I desperately wanted. This was part of my routine, even now. If I wanted something but didn't have money to get it, I would just look at it. But on this occasion, I wish I had just continued for the registers. I felt 2 hands push me to the ground from my left. I was shocked for a moment as I didn't fully know what had just happened. The sticky and dusty floor beneath me hurt. It took me a second to look at my attacker, and when I did, I immediately knew that this was very wrong. It was the old man from up the road. He had found me in the place that I had hid from him just a month prior. He started to yell at me, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. I don't know if it was the adrenaline ringing in my ears or his rage just taking over, but the tone in which he was shouting shook me. I tried to get up to run, and when I planted my foot on the ground to get up, he kicked it out from below me, which made me fall back on the ground. Thankfully, a staff member arrived at this point. They must have heard his shouting from across the store and come to check on what was happening. I didn't get a good look at the staff member, but I am thankful for them. As I got up to run with a loaf of bread in my hand, I could hear the man reacting to me getting away, and it took everything in me to not look behind me to look at him, but I knew that he was furious. I ran straight out of the store with the bread, without realizing it, and almost threw up from all the emotions. I told my parents when I got home, and they both made it clear that I wouldn't be going on any shopping trips by myself from here on out. They didn't think about how I and my sister walked together to school, which in hindsight should have been something that they thought of. The trip to my school wasn't a long one. It was just over 1 kilometer long, or just half a mile, but the trip was still tough on small legs. There were quite a few hills, which added time to our trip there, and the path went along a creek with nothing around it. It was nice and isolated, which helped relax my mind after school. Not long after the supermarket incident, I and my sister were walking home from school and just made our way to the beginning of the path along the creek when we saw an SUV that had been parked there for what I assumed had been a while. Thought it was empty, but as you could probably guess, it wasn't. We turned to enter the creek when the SUV car door opened and we heard someone shouting out to us, "Hey, do you guys want to drive home?" It was the man. My sister, who was always trusting of others, started to walk towards the truck, but I quickly held her back. "What's wrong?" the man said in a cheerful tone. This was very different from the unintelligible screaming from just the week before, and I obviously wanted nothing to do with it, or this man. I quickly started to lead my sister toward the creek, and the man quickly scooted over towards the door. "Wait, I'll walk you home," he said. I should have run up the hill towards the school, but instead, I started to sprint down the creek. Looking back at this, I feel stupid. Daniel was faster than me, and the man had been able to catch up to him in seconds, but for some reason he didn't leave his truck. All I heard was another unintelligible scream and his truck driving away. My sister was beyond mad that we didn't get a ride home and that we had to walk, but I didn't care. She and I were safe, and so we continued walking along the path. Thinking back to it, the path was beautiful and connected to either side to small quiet streets, like the perfect in-between of isolation. So, Sadly, my young mind didn't realize that the creek opened to two quiet streets, and so when I saw this same silver SUV on the street at the end of the path, I froze. What could I have done? Felt powerless and had to take care of my sister, who was only now figuring out this man may not have good intentions. I decided that the best course of action was to cross the creek and walk through the bushes to the other side. This was a beyond dangerous idea, as there were slippery rocks, animals, and running water. This very easily could have injured or killed us, but somehow we managed. We climbed over logs of wood and under tree branches, through prickly bushes and through large plants, but we managed to do it and crossed to another road that we followed toward the main road, which took us home. Obviously, those two SUVs could have been different, but at the time, I was certain they were the same, and even now, I am not 100% sure if they were different. I only found out about this later, but my parents got the police involved at this point. But based on the fact that more stuff happened, I'm going to say that they probably didn't do much. There were a few other things that happened throughout this time, like mail being stolen, or our bins being pushed over, and the front door knocking at the early hours of the morning that we knew was him, although we had no real proof. The last thing that I will bring up before I end this post is something that I am not 100% sure was a dream or not. For context, my dad used to have campouts with me and my sister. We would sleep out on the couch, and my dad would sleep on a mattress on the floor. The couches we would sleep on were right next to the front door in the living room, and we would watch movies with pizza or some other type of takeaway. It was always really fun, and I remember those nights, but one particular night will stick with me. Everybody else went to sleep, and Naruto was on. I hadn't watched or read about it at that point, but I recognized the characters. I was sitting directly next to the large window that looked out into the driveway. I was just enjoying doing nothing when I saw some movement out on the driveway, and so I looked out. And there he was, walking up to our front door wearing his white pants and white button-up t-shirt. He was staring directly at our front door with such focus that I felt like nothing would break it. But something did, and it was me. He looked at me, and I could see in his eyes that it was funny to him. He simply held his hand up, waved at me, and then placed one finger on his mouth as if he were telling me to be quiet, then jogged away. I surprisingly fell asleep not long later, and for the longest time I thought it was a dream, until I read all of Naruto and recognized the scene. It was then that I realized that it might not have actually been a dream, and that he might have been attempting something. And after what my mom had told me, I think I know what he was trying to do. Part 3. So it's been a while since I've given you guys an update. I've been busy with school, and digging up these memories is a little distracting for me. I would like to thank you all for the incredible positive responses to my post. It makes me feel better about all of this, but without further ado, let's just start the story. It was summer, and the local council decided to have a fair. The local council hired a few clowns, some face painting stations, food trucks, and bouncy castles at the local football field. Of course, I and my sister were beyond excited to go. For a young child, this was the hottest ticket in town, and my parents were happy to take us as it was just down the road and free. I remember the new field being busy. The crowd was difficult to walk in and even hard to see through, but we managed to find ourselves right next to a giant blow-up bouncy slide. As it was summer, the actual balloon of the slide burned to the touch, and the sun made me feel like I was slowly melting. Regardless of this, I must have spent at least 40 minutes going up and down that slide. I was having too much fun and didn't notice that both my parents and sister had gone missing in the giant crowd of people. I got down from the slide, put my shoes and socks back on, and started to make my way through the crowd. I didn't actually know where I was going, and I remember feeling incredibly anxious as I waddled around the fair. It wasn't until I felt a hand on my shoulder and then on my forearm that I felt safer. It was my dad, I thought. He had found me, maybe. I couldn't actually tell whose arm it was, as the angle at which I was holding my arm made it difficult to look in at the crowd. The whole day was overstimulating, and I wasn't thinking clearly. I should have known from how hard the hand was gripping me, or the fact that it was leading me to the parking lot, that something was wrong. I only really felt terror when I saw my parents running towards me, running faster than I had ever seen them run. Adrenaline immediately coursed through my veins, and I pivoted my body around and immediately saw the leathery hand on my arm in white pants. The link was connected in my mind as to who it was. My mom's scream was the first thing I heard, and the angry or annoyed grunt of the old man followed it. He started to jog with me towards his truck, but I had started to fight back against his grip. He may have been old, but he was stronger than any elderly person should be, and was much faster too. Everything about this dude was wrong, and it may have been my young mind making it all up, but I still believe that something was very weird about him. No elderly person should be like this. At this point, I was only a couple of feet away from his car, and as he opened the door, I felt 2 hands on my right arm that pulled me hard against the man's grip. The man's grip held long before my dad came out from behind me and slammed the old man's head into the car, which loosened his grip on me. At this point, my mom grabbed me and ran, and we went straight home. Apparently, they didn't notice me slip away on the bouncy slide, and they ran into some family friends who offered to take care of my sister while they searched for me. I don't know what type of person it takes to do something like that in such a populated area, but this man was not normal, not in the slightest. My dad returned later that night. He looked really roughed up and drained of all energy. From what I gathered over the years, they got into a pretty brutal fight that ended with the police breaking it up. My dad didn't get into that much trouble considering that he had called the police on the man before, but they still took him to the station to give a statement. When he sat down on the couch, he looked exhausted, bruises forming all over and a cut on his lip and upper eyebrow still leaking blood, but he had a smile on his face and I could hear him telling my mom that it was over. They were both hopeful, and so was I. A couple of weeks later, my cousins came back over, and Daniel wanted to know everything. He felt like he was the main victim and deserved to know, because he was the first one the man shouted at and the one that the man wanted to get the most. I don't disagree that the man probably would try to hurt him on sight, but it felt weird to me, almost like he was trying to take credit for something that, to him, sounded like a creepy story, but to my family was real. Anyways, we decided to go out for a bit. My parents trusted us because we were with my older cousin. We went up to the usual play park, which was across the street from the man's currently vacant house. Daniel was telling us all about how he swore that he saw him near his house. Keep in mind that he lives almost 3 hours away. I'm not saying he's a liar, but I am saying that he wanted to be a part of this. Anyways, we were playing hide and seek. Tay, our neighbor, was seeking, and she had only just started to count down from 60. I always tagged along with Daniel because he found the best spots always. He ran across the road towards the man's house, and Daniel jumped the fence, which I immediately stopped at. "Come on," he said from the other side of the waist-high fence. "Nobody will find us." To me, the house felt like a void that we would get sucked into, and I had up until this point refused to even be near it. But for some reason I agreed. I joined him in the man's yard, and to my shock, Daniel wanted to go deeper into his home, not just his yard. I made it clear that this was a very bad idea. Even if he was in custody, jail, or whatever, we would be breaking into someone's home. Daniel didn't seem scared by it though. I think the whole idea of being in the man's house seemed actually attractive to him. We went around the side fence into his backyard. It was way overgrown, almost like nobody had been living there for years. I made my way towards his back window and looked inside. From what I could make out, he was a hardcore minimalist, only having a TV, chair, fireplace, and shelved that housed some photos of a much younger man and some medals. He was a veteran. It changes nothing to me, but it explains his above-average speed and strength, especially for his age. The sound of a door sliding open almost made me yell in fear. Daniel had found an unlocked sliding door and wanted to venture inward. I ran around to find him, but he was already inside before I could stop him. At this point, I was really curious to find out more, but I understood the risk of this all. It didn't matter if I understood it because I went in with him. The rest of the house reflected the living room. The kitchen had a fridge and a stove, and the dining room only had a small table with one wooden chair. There was no decoration on the walls or signs of life besides these sad reminders of how lonely the man had been. As I said, this changes nothing for me. I hate this man more than anyone can know. We made our way upstairs and found 2 completely empty rooms and 1 bedroom. A single bed with a bedside table filled with different types of weapons. A hatchet, a knife, and a knuckle duster. I had never seen a knuckle duster before, and I successfully fought the urge to take it and put it on. This was something that Daniel failed to do, as he almost immediately grabbed it, which I almost hit him for. We continued searching the house, and Daniel had the idea that he must have something weird in his wardrobe. And when we opened it, he gave a disappointed sigh as there was nothing inside except for a few white button-ups and white pants. This especially creeped me out as he never wore anything else. We made our way back down the stairs and into the living room, and to our surprise, we missed the table that sat next to the couch. It was just out of view and only had 1 drawer. Daniel opened it and struggled to get it out fast, but when he did, we found something profoundly strange. It was a single photo. Neither of us could make out what it was, but we knew that it looked familiar. Daniel sat down on the chair board, and it was only then that we heard Tay scream out that she had given up. Daniel shot up and sprinted back out to the backyard. We had both completely forgotten about her, But as I put the photo back in the drawer, something stood out to me about the photo. The fence was navy blue. This was something quite unusual in my area, and I knew of only one navy blue fence in the suburb, our side door entrance fence. This realization made the photo seem so much clearer. The white pebbles on the ground leading to the backyard, the cream color of the garage next to it, and the green bush at the end of the path. This was my home. He had a photo of it. I quickly met up with Daniel and Tay, and we went back home. I should have told my parents, but I was scared that I would be in trouble if they found out that we were in his home. I understand why we would be, of course, but I still didn't want to live up to it. About a month after that, we were having another camp out with me, my dad, and my sister. Both my sister and my dad had fallen asleep with the TV still on, illuminating the room. It was one of those weird situations where you were both really comfortable and really uncomfortable. That was my situation at least, and on most nights I love this feeling, but that feeling will always be tied to this night. I was drifting off to sleep as well, but I heard the sliding back door open slowly. I peered up above the couch and saw a silhouette of a man standing in the doorway. I froze with fear and started to cry. My dad woke up at this point. I'm not entirely sure how. Maybe it was a parental instinct, but he knew almost immediately that something was wrong. He got off the bed and crouched towards the dining room, which is where the back door was. The other man had begun to walk slowly through the house at this point, murmuring to himself. To my horror, I recognized the pants, the bright white pants. So many questions going through my mind, the most prevalent one being how he was in custody. But none of that mattered now because there he was, standing in my dining room, holding something. My dad charged him from around the corner and tackled him into the wall. The old man punched him in the arm, and my dad immediately dropped that arm. It was the knuckle dusters that Daniel was wearing. It was at this point that the lights turned on. I don't know if it was my dad or the man, but they came on, and my dad made a noise of pure horror. Both men were fully healed from their last fight, but my dad took a real beating. I had always expected that the old man had his ass kicked, but now I'm not too sure. My dad was standing in the doorway to the living room, shielding us with his body. My sister was awake and crying at this time, as was I, and my mom also ran down the stairs and immediately saw everything that was going on. The man lunged at my dad with a thing in his hand that I could see was a hatchet. My dad threw himself to the side, and his other arm got grazed by the hatchet, drawing blood. My mom at this point leapt towards the old man and pushed him into the kitchen bench, which made him scream. But he was up almost as fast as he was down. He slashed at my mom and missed her, and my dad ran to the other room and started to call the police. My mom was dodging his slashes while also throwing things at him. Once she got to the knife block, she armed herself with 2 knives and threw one of them, and the handle hit him in the face. Knocking him back, my mom took the opportunity and drove the knife into his shoulder, which made him scream again. He fell to the ground and didn't try to get up until the police arrived. After this happened, we moved. Not too far away, maybe about 30 minutes. Even though we live so close to that place, we have never returned. As much as I have been tempted to go back and relive some stuff for the time being, I'm pretty comfortable staying here. Apparently, he paid bail and was staying in the hospital for a while before staying at somebody else's house. I know that he made his way back to his house before making his way to my home. It creeps me out to think that I could have been in his home at the same time as him. Well, anyways, it's been 10 years, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. Well, anyway, it's been about 10 years, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. I want to thank all of you for hearing my story, and I think it's tradition on the subreddit to say this, so to the old frickin' creep up the road who terrorized my family, let's not meet again. When I was 17, my bedroom had a window looking out of my backyard. The backyard was fenced in, but on the other side of the fence were some woods and a retention pond. I'd never been scared of this and kept the blinds open so that when the sun rose in the morning, the natural light would help wake me up. One night, I was up late on my phone with my dog lying in bed next to me. At around 2 a.m., my dog jumped and started barking at the window. At first, I thought he was barking at his reflection and told him to stop. But I then realized he was looking at the left side of the window while his reflection was on the right. I couldn't see outside the window because I had left the lamp on my nightstand on. All I could see in the window was the reflection of my bedroom. Not wanting to alert what might be out there that I was scared, I faked a yawn, set my phone aside, and turned off the lamp. I then laid down facing the window, and I swear I saw a set of human eyes looking back at me from the left side of the window. I drink a lot of water at night, so I have an empty bottle on my nightstand. I grabbed it and pretended to just realize it was empty. I turned on the lamp and acted like I was going to get water. I went to my parents' room and told my dad, and he told me not to worry. We had these motion-activated floodlights, and they hadn't turned on, so there was no way anything was out there. I went back to my room and told myself I was just seeing things, closed the blinds, and turned off the lamp and got some sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I went to take my dog out and decided to check out the pine straw bedding underneath my window. It was visibly disturbed. I did my best to ignore that and remember what my dad said about the floodlights. That worked well until my dad tested the floodlights later that day and found that the bulbs had burnt out. To this day, I keep my blinds closed and lamp off when I sleep. I don't want to risk anything being able to see me. And if anything is somehow peeking through my window, I want to know it's there. If there was someone at my window last night, that's not me. Edit. I just want to say thanks to everyone that commented. I typed this out because a project I've been working on caused this memory to resurface. Sometimes just writing something like this down and chucking it into the void helps me deal with it. I'm 22 now, so I'm far enough removed from it that I can mostly just look at it as a weird experience I had, but there is definitely a degree of paranoia left from this and other things I've dealt with. To everybody who has had a similar experience, my heart goes out to you and I hope you're doing well.